Are you ready for an unusual and fun resource for your genealogy research? I'm talking about using post office letter list as part of your genealogy research. You're going to love this. Hey there, I'm Lisa Lisson, a genealogy expert with over 15 years of helping others find their ancestors. On this YouTube channel, I share my best strategies, tools, and tips to help you find your ancestors and grow a healthy family tree, all without being overwhelmed. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, you're in the right place. Today's video is sponsored by newspapers.com, and I thank them for their support. You're going to hear a little bit more about them in just a bit. So our ancestors were the recipients of mail, just like we are today. But have you ever really wondered about how that process worked and, well, what happened if the letters didn't make it all the way to their house? Okay, so let's take a step back and think about the process of getting a letter. Now, once a letter was mailed, it could take weeks or months or longer to actually arrive at its destination, the post office in the town where your ancestor lived. And because many people only visited the post office or the town once a month or less, unclaimed letters would be listed in the newspaper, in the local newspaper. Individuals would then be notified that, oh, I've got a letter. So next time they went to town, then they would go to the post office to retrieve their letter. So what can these letter lists tell us? How does this help us as genealogy researchers? So if you find your ancestor on one of these letter lists in the newspaper, it's time to dig in a little bit deeper. You know that they have some connection to that place. They perhaps possibly and probably lived there or lived within close proximity. So it's going to give you a place to start looking, perhaps for those other records that we typically look for, those perhaps looking for deeds or tax records and then the census records as well. So one thing to consider is that a person did not have to live in the community to have a letter waiting for them at the post office. For individuals migrating across the country, family might send letters to a destination that the individual is eventually going to go pass through. And in that case, it's given you an idea of what the probable migration route might have been for your ancestors. Now I'm going to turn the camera around. I'm going to take you over to newspapers.com to show you what these letter lists look like, the types of information you can deduce from them, and share with you some tips on how to improve your search. Now I'm excited to share with you a little bit about today's sponsor, newspapers.com. Now newspapers.com is the largest online newspaper archive, now with more than 1 billion pages from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond. So let me ask you, are you captivated by stories from the past? Well, newspapers.com can be your time machine to grant you unparalleled access to 3 centuries of history. Dive into their extensive archives to experience history as it happened, to explore the news, events, and everyday moments that shape the world around us. And in case you're wondering, yes, this is social history, that favorite part of genealogy research that I talk about so much. Their easy-to-use search feature allows you to filter by date, by location, newspaper, and more. And when you find something interesting, they make it easy for you to save it as well as share your discoveries with others. So go explore 1 billion pages of newspapers and make infinite discoveries today over at newspapers.com. Now newspapers.com is offering a special coupon code for an exclusive 20% off of your subscription. Just use the coupon code Lisa Lisson at checkout. I will have that code as well as the link to newspapers.com down in the description below. So we are over here at newspapers.com. So we are going to take a look at letter list. So to find letter list, you can actually search for that term. I just put right here in the keyword, I put letter list. Now I did use quotes for that, and because I wanted to be able to use those letters side by side. So in other words, and actually it prompted me to do it. So for instance, if I had just written letter list, it will ask me, do you only want to search when they're found together? So in the quotes. And so I said yes, because I want to narrow down the results that I get. And that will definitely shorten the list that I have to search through. Now I can put a date. If I have a certain date that I'm looking for, I could certainly do that. So what if we said something, I usually would put like a date range. So what if I said 1890 to 1900, and let's pick out Washington State. So you can search for areas where your ancestor may have been to look through that way. And so I would hit seek. All right. And here we have, as you can see, these letters that we are coming. So it's showing me what it found, and it's found 712 matches. So I can absolutely, scroll through. I can narrow it down a little bit more if I wish, by age, by date, if I needed to. But let's go ahead and take a look at this first one, this Fairhaven Herald. Again, this is January 3rd, 1893, out of Fairhaven, Washington. So let's click through, and it's going to pop me right down. So it gives you that, highlights the letter, letter list in yellow, because that's what I hit my search term. And let me adjust this a bit so we can read this a little bit better. So let me enlarge this for us. Okay, so this is the letter list. This is the list of letters remaining uncalled for in Fairhaven Post Office for the week ending December 31st, 1892. And so, these are all the letters that are there in the post office. They haven't been picked up, and so they want people to come pick them up. Now, if they're never claimed, they will eventually end up at the dead letter the dead letter office in Washington, D.C. Sometimes they'll tell you by what date. Other times listed will say, if you don't claim these within a certain time period. This article doesn't seem to do that. They just want to get these things picked up. What I want to show you is that in this listing that I find so fascinating is it's a very small subset, obviously, of the population, but it tells us who's there or who might be passing through. And it's given us, M. Alexander, William Becker, Ed G. Brenton. And so I find these really fascinating. Now, one of the things that you notice is that we have women mentioned. Now, how many of you have trouble finding female ancestors, right? I know I certainly do. Well, women, they had letters. They got letters sent to them as well. And so we do find women in these letter lists. So this is another possible realm. I consider it an out-of-the-box type of resource. It's an unusual resource, but it's definitely a resource where we are going to find some women mentioned. So if you're struggling to find females, check those newspapers, check the letter list, do the search on the females that way and find them as well. So as you can see, we have this nice little listing here. I do think it's interesting to see, when I'm looking at these lists, I'm looking to see, are there a lot of the same name? So, which I don't really necessarily see here. They all seem to be different names, but I do try to kind of see, is there a family grouping that's maybe not picking up things, kind of to see what's there. And I don't necessarily really see that. I do see, as you said, like I said, men and women. Do notice that they are using a lot of, particularly for the men, it seems like, initials. So for this MacArthur, I guess, JT. So your ancestor, maybe his name was James Thomas, and if you're searching on James Thomas MacArthur, you're not going to find it. But if you search on JT, then you might get the hit. Make sure that you consider using, a nickname or an initial when it comes to searching for names in newspapers with that. So again, it tells us the hours. It tells us if you are calling for these, please let us know that they have been advertised in the list so they could take the name off of that. All right, here's another example I wanted to share with you and give you some insights that I kind of gained from this particular letter list that we have here. Now, this is the Daily News and Intelligencer, July 21st edition, 1903. This is out of Mexico, Missouri. And I thought this was a really interesting list. So it's on the surface, it looks like any other list that we've been looking at, right? Again, the letter lists that are there at the post office. It gives the date that they're there, July 21st, 1903. If they're not called for in 30 days, they will be sent to the dead letter office in Washington, D.C. So they've got 30 days, kind of notice, to pick up their letters. And again, so looking through this, we have Irvin Asbury, Florence Bryant, May Bryan, H.C. Brunswick, Mrs. D.B. Bailey, J.C. Cross. So you can see, looks very similar to what we've been seeing. This is interesting. We actually even have companies. So J.B. Glasscock and Company. Okay, so that's some businesses perhaps are not picking up their letters. And again, here's a Merchant's Hotel has a letter that they need to come by and pick up as well. So men and women, making sure we're using initials in our searches, making sure we're using name. But when I read through this list, there was something that kind of jumped out at me. Now, part of this is because I've been researching for a very long time. And this is Missouri. And as I started looking through this letter list in part of my research, I realized I'm looking at the surnames. I'm seeing who is there, what surnames are in a community. And I'm always kind of putting that in the back of my brain. It's just something a habit I've developed. And I start looking and I see Asbury, Bryant, Brunswick, Bailey, Dawson, Glasscock, Green. I see Gleason, Herod, Johnson, two Johnsons, a Kelly, two Kellys, a Lee. Guys, all of those are surnames. Those surnames that I just mentioned, I see them all back in Virginia. Now, this is a Missouri newspaper, 1903, but I'm seeing these surnames that are very common back in the areas of Virginia that I actually research. And it gets my brain thinking, like, okay, this could be a potential place of migration that the family has moved over the years. I do know that some of my ancestors and some from that community moved, as they said, west. I do know that one ended up in that Missouri, Iowa, Midwest area. And I'm realizing, wow, maybe there was a migration path out of Virginia that eventually ended up with these families, these surnames in Missouri. This is something that I need to add to my research to look at to see if perhaps I might be able to track down some of those ancestors that I lost along the way. So I did want to show you that again, in addition to finding names, in addition to searching for my one particular ancestor that I'm looking for, I'm always making note of who is around, who is close by, whose names are appearing in general together. I don't know if any of these particular people know each other or know each other well, or if they're related, but it is a pattern that I'm starting to develop and see. So I wanted to put that in there, particularly for those of you who have more genealogy research experience. You might start to pick up on this as well. I recognize if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to know enough of your ancestors and the areas where they live to pick this up, but this is something that you're going to work towards in the future. So definitely wanted to show you that piece of it. If you enjoy researching your ancestors in historical newspapers as much as I do, be sure and hit that like button and let me know. That way I'll know you want to have more content on how to use newspapers for your next research project. As you can see, these post office lists in the local newspapers are very unique, and they are an often overlooked resource for the genealogy researcher. But they are one more reason why newspaper research is crucial to finding your ancestors. If you would like to learn more about using historical newspapers as part of your genealogy research, watch Avoid These 5 Common Errors in Your Historical Newspaper Research. It's on your screen now.